This is Blade Rondo Grim Garden Game Manual reading. New and updated rules. Amulets have been added. Perform following actions have been added to Glossary. Detailed rules have been updated. And the new solo game rules have been added as well. Blade Rondo Grim Garden is a fast-paced card-based clash of swords and sorcery for 1 to 2 players, with 7 chosen swords in hand. Face your opponent on the field of battle. Reduce their life to 0 to be declared the winner. To get started, read on to learn the rules for a 2-player game. The additional rules for a solo game are covered later in this rulebook, but don't skip ahead. Unless otherwise posted, you'll need to know the basics first. Set up your area as shown below. Attribute dice. Place each die in the circle matching the color with the 0 facing up. The red die tracks your attack, the green die tracks your voltage, and the blue die tracks your defense. Life stones. Place your life stone on 15. The space marked 15. Attribute board. For each play, align the top of the board with that of your opponent. Breath control. Place 1 Kindle and 1 Enarmor card face up in front of you. First time player, skip to the first battle on page 28 before reading further. The first battle. Completely incompatible Maria and Sonya attempt to kill one another on a daily basis under the pretext of sparring. Take up their favorite swords and strike down your most bitter rival. Determine who will play as Maria and who will play as Sonya. Take the 10 cards listed below for your character. Maria, number 1, Dazzling Dagger. 2, Runic Rondel. 3, Concussive Claymore. 4, Corvus Orchid. 5, Emboldened March. 6, Echoing Nocturne. 7, Diffusing Rhapsody. 8, Soul-Piercing Scream. 9, Wandering Topaz. 10, Revisionist Sapphire. Sonya 1, Excess Edge. 2, Sigil Shard. 3, Brutal Bludgeoning. 4, Luminous Bouquet. 5, Dispel Edwillis. 6, Pyro Garland. 7, Cascading Carol. 8, Unnerving Falsetto. 9, Sanctuary Fluorite. 10, Secession Lapis. Shuffle your 10 cards, then choose 7 at random to build your hand. Set aside the 3 remaining cards without showing them to your opponent. Follow the steps 1 and 4 as described from page 5 to set up your area. You are now ready to begin the match. Once a winner has been decided, play a second game with the same set of 10 cards, but this time choose the 7 cards to build your hand. Shuffle the 40 sword cards, then deal 15 to each player face down. The 10 remaining cards won't be used in this match. Return them to the box without looking at them. Choose 7 of your 15 cards to build your hand for the match. The 8 remaining cards won't be used in this match. Return them to the box without showing them to your opponent. Randomly determine which player will go first. The player going second takes the equipping card, places it face up in front of them, and increases their attack to 1. Once both players are ready, the battle can begin. Want to battle using your favorite swords? If players own a copy of this game, you may each prepare a hand of 7 sword cards to use in the match. Your hand may include up to 2 copies of a card with the same name. When playing this variant steps 2 and 3 described above. Turn overview. You and your opponent will alternate taking turns until one of you is victorious. Each turn consists of the following 3 steps. 1. Upkeep. At the beginning of your turn, increase your voltage. Voltage cannot exceed 9. If your voltage is already at 9 at the beginning of your turn, you suffer a voltage burst and lose 1 life. You may exchange any number of amulets in your set area with the same or fewer number of amulets from your hand, no more than once per turn. Resolve your beginning of turn bonded effects. See bonded on page 13. Bonded. Play this card normally. If its bonded effect is resolved, place it in the specified player's set area. That player gains the effects described on this card for as long as it remains in their set area. Although cards with bonded effects have a limited icon, do not discard them at the end of the turn. Bonded effects are not considered actions and cannot be responded to. Resolve your familiar's beginning of turn effects. See familiar on page 14. Familiar. A card placed in your set area via a summon a familiar name effect. Number 2. Actions. Play one or more cards from your hand. The total cost of the cards you play cannot exceed your voltage. How to use a card. Choose a breath control card from your breath control area or a sword card from your hand and place it in your play area. If you choose a gambit card, place it face down, otherwise place it face up. The number in the top left corner of the card indicates the cost you must pay to play it. Your voltage does not decrease when you play a card. Instead, it serves as an indicate the maximum total cost you can spend on your turn. All gambit cards have a cost of 1, and an armor's cost is however much you choose to pay. If you played a card face up, resolve its effects. Cleanup. At the end of your turn, move all face-up cards with a limited icon in your play area to your discard pile. Return all other face-up sword cards in your play area to your hand. Return all breath control cards in your play area to your breath control area. Your opponent returns all face-down cards in their play area to their hand. Adjusting attributes and life values. When one of your attributes changes, turn the corresponding die so that the number facing up reflects the new value. When your current life increases or decreases, move your life stone to the appropriate space. Attributes have a maximum value of 9, and life has a maximum of value of 15. However, some sword cards have effects that can allow you to temporarily exceed your maximum attack or defense values. Should this happen, do not adjust your attribute dice. Roughly what the game area looks like. In the set area, place the information cards with bonded effects. Breath control is a little bit below your play area. In your play area, and place the cards that you're going to play there. The card overview. You will find the following information on breath control and sword cards: the card name, the cost you must pay to play. Limited icon cards bearing this icon are discarded if they are in a player's play area at the end of the turn. Discipline symbol, and then indicates which discipline this card belongs to. Effects, text explaining what this card does when used. Unless there is a specific discipline symbol listed to the left of the effect, it shares the discipline symbol shown in the top right of the card. Flavor effects or flavor text. Experts from the stories or legends that have no effect on gameplay. At the bottom of each card, you will find its card number as well as the name of its illustrator. This information has no impact on the game. Card disciplines. The cards and actions used in this game are divided into 5 disciplines. While a card's discipline does not affect how it is played, it shows what kind of effects it is likely to have. There's physical, a simple strike with solid steel. The strength of a card's physical attack is determined by your attack attribute. Magical, no shield can stop a mage's craft. Magical attacks ignore your opponent's defense attributes when dealing damage. Assist, turn the tide's battles in your favor. Assist cards provide a variety of beneficial effects such as restoring life or increasing your attributes. Some will even let you summon familiars to aid you in battle. Gambit. Never let your foe catch you unawares. Gambit cards have effects that allow you to react to your opponent's actions. Special. The power to do the unexpected. Special cards offer you a choice of different effects. Then there's breath control. Empower yourself through control the breathing and techniques. These cards are kept in your breath control area and are used to increase your attributes. You will always have a copy of Enkindle or an armor. The player going second will also have access to Enquicken. Then we have effect keywords. The following keywords are used to describe certain card effects. Physical. Deal damage to your opponent equal to your attack attribute or that of an attacking familiar minus your opponent's defense. Magical. Deal X damage to your opponent. Summon familiar name. When you play this card, place it face up in your set area as a familiar with the name. Attributes and effects described on the card. Although cards with this effect have a limited icon, do not discard them at the end of your turn. Use the familiar's attack attributes when it performs a physical attack. You may use a familiar defense attribute in place of your own when your opponent or one of their familiars performs a physical attack. Response. When you play this card, place it in your play area face down at the end of your turn. It does not return to your hand, nor is it discarded during your opponent's turn. If they perform an action with a discipline symbol that matches one of the symbols listed to the right of the response keyword on your face down gambit card, you may choose to turn your gambit card face up and resolve its effects. When using more than one gambit card in response to an opponent's action, turn your gambit card face up and resolve their effects one at a time in the order of your choosing. At the end of your opponent's turn, discard any gambit cards you used. Return gambit cards that you didn't use and are still face down to your hand. Secondary. If this card's effects dealt at least one damage to your opponent, resolve this effect. Hone. When you play this card, you may choose to resolve its hone effects before paying its cost. Using a card's hone effects is optional. Tribute. Resolve this effect when you pay the cost to use this card. This effect is mandatory and must be resolved. At the beginning of your turn, you may exchange one or more cards bearing this icon in your set area with one or more cards from your hand that also bear this icon. The total number of amulets on the card you place from your hand must be less than or equal to the total number of amulets on the cards you return to your hand. Placing a card in your set area in this manner is not considered an action, so your opponent may not use gambit cards in response. Glossary. You refers to player who used the card in the case of a bonded effect. If it refers to the player who gained the bonded effect. Skip that one. Action. The use of any card or card effect with a discipline symbol. Attack. A type of action that has either physical or magical discipline symbol. Diabolical rectal is both an attack and an action. Okay. Negate. Cancel the effect of a card or action except for its tribute, which must still be paid. If a card's effect is negated, its cost is not refunded. And if the negated card has a limited icon, it is discarded at the end of the turn. Ignore. Treat the specified attribute as if it had a value of 0. Take/deal damage. Taking/dealing damage causes the affected player to reduce their current life. Losing life is not the same thing as taking damage, and therefore affects that state. Lose X life cannot be affected by damage modifying effects. Respond. The use of a face-down gambit card in your play area during your opponent's turn is in response to an action performed by your opponent or one of their familiars. In order to use a gambit card, one of the discipline symbols listed to the right of the response effect must match the discipline symbol of the action you are responding to. When a gambit card is used, it is turned face up and its effects is resolved before your opponent resolves the action you responded to. Revive. When the specified player's life falls to 0, they recover the amount of life specified on the card instead of losing the game. May. Perform the following action. Perform the action described below. If no cost is shown, the action may be performed for a cost of 0. May perform the following action. Dazzle, magic attack of 3. You must pay 1 cost to use Rondo's Dazzle action. Detailed rules. This section is an expert that provides an in-depth explanation of the rules of Blade Rondo Grim Garden. You do not need to read this section before playing the game. Instead, refer to it while playing to answer any questions that may arise. Number 1. Hand refers to only the sword cards you have in your hand. It does not include breath control cards or sword cards placed in your play area or set area. 2. Attributes. If an effect that changes your attribute specifies a duration, such as until the end of the turn, do not adjust your attribute dice. These effects can cause your attributes to temporarily exceed the maximum value of 9. Example, if a player with an attack of 9 plays Dayspring Katana, their attack would increase to 11 until the end of their turn. Damage. 3.1. When the effect that deals damage is mitigated, not negated, that is handled separately by an opponent's defense or other means, it is still considered to have dealt damage even though the VAT value is 0. Example, player A has an attack of 0. On his turn, he plays Crushing Claymore. His opponent, player B, has a defense of 2. She takes 0 damage from the attack. Player A then uses his luminescent effect to increase the damage taken by 1. As Crushing Claymore attacks has now dealt at least 1 damage, player A resolves its secondary effect. Losing life is not the same thing as taking damage. As such, luminescent effects cannot be used when a player loses life due to poison or a voltage burst. Number 4. Response. When resolving this effect of a face-down gambit card, choose one to turn face up and resolve its effects before deciding whether or not to use another face-down gambit card. Gambit card's effects can only be resolved during your opponent's turn. Unless it is specifically stated, cards without a response effect cannot be used in response to and be resolved before an opponent's actions. Cards without a response effects cannot be placed face down in your play area, except when performing a supporting draw in a solo game. Using cards. Players use breath control and sword cards by placing them in their play area. Some cards have effects that are resolved as though the card was newly placed in their owner's play area. Example, a player may choose to use Dancing Dagger's effect to use the card again in step 15 and 5-2 overleaf, and if they do, they resolve the attack again beginning from step 1. 5.2. Attacks are resolved in the following order. Resolve the card's hone effect if desired. Pay the cost to use the card. If the card has an attribute effect, resolve it at this time. If the attack is negated by any ongoing effects, do not perform the following steps, such as by Wandering Topaz. If the defending player has any face-down gambit cards, they may turn them face up and resolve their effects. Effects that adjust the amount of damage dealt or state at the end of the attack are not resolved at this time. Resolve effects that state before resolving this attack, such as Final Noria. The attacking player determines their attack or the attack of the attacking familiar. Include the effects of cards such as Dayspring Katana. Resolve effects that increase the attacking player's attack. Resolve effects that double the attacking player's attack. The defending player determines their defense. Include the effects of cards such as Moonlight Routelle. The defending player may choose to use a familiar's defense attribute instead of their own. Resolve effects that adjust the defending player's defense or the defense of their chosen familiar. Calculate the base damage, physical attack, or magical attack. Resolve effects that adjust the amount of damage dealt, such as sacrificial tourmaline. Resolve effects that decrease the amount of damage dealt. If this results in a negative number, the attack deals 0 damage. Resolve the effects that state change the amount of damage dealt by the attack. The defending player may decide the order in which these effects are resolved. The attacking player may use luminescent. The defending player may use luminescent. The defending player decreases their life equal to the amount of damage they were dealt. Resolve secondary effects. Resolve effects that stay at the end of the attack, such as warding agate. The defending player may decide the order in which they are resolved. Resolve effects that stay after resolving this attack, such as dancing dagger. Cards with bonded or summoning effects. You may have multiple bonded effects with the same name. Some effects cause cards with bonded or summoning effects to be placed outside of the set area. Do not resolve those cards bonded or summoning effects in such cases, and exclude them from the effects of cards that would reference their type or otherwise count them. Even if the effects of cards with bonded and summoning effects are negated, they may still be referenced for other cards' effects. Example, a player may choose to use Dancing Dagger's effect to use the card again in Step 15 in 5.2 Overleaf. If they do, they resolve the attack again beginning from Step 1. Familiars. Opponents always refers to player or not a familiar. Example, player A's Minotaur familiar uses a bull rush. Their opponent, player B, responds with the Misty Pearl. Player A must pay 1 cost or the bull rush attack is negated. Coins. At the beginning of their turn, a player may return any number of cards bearing coin icons from their set area to their hand and replace them with different cards bearing coin icons from their hand. Cards placed in a player's set area in this manner are not considered to have been played from their hand, so gambit cards may not be used in response. Solo mode. Setting up a solo game. Set up your area described from page 5. Place the second attribute board opposite yours facing you. Separate the level 1, level 2, and level 3 muse cards into 3 piles. Shuffle each separately and place them face down next to the second attribute board to form the 3 muses decks. Number 2. Remove the 8 gambit cards from the 40 sword cards. Take 1 copy of each as an amulet and set aside for the 4 remaining cards. 3. Shuffle the 32 remaining sword cards and place them face down next to your attribute board to form the sword deck. Number 4. Draw 10 cards from the sword deck and choose 4 of them to build your hand. Return the 6 remaining cards to the box. They won't be used for the game. Number 5. The game will consist of 5 matches. The first 2 against level 1 muses, the next 2 against level 2 muses, and then the final match against a level 3 muse. Draw 1 card from the appropriate muse deck and place it face up next to the second attribute board. Set up the muse's attributes board using the base stats listed in the top left of the card. Place the lifestone listed in the top left of the card. Place the lifestone on the space marked 15. You do not need to place the green die as muses don't use voltage. You now are ready to begin the first match. Once you've defeated your opponent, choose a reward as described below. Then repeat step 5 and begin another match. You win if you can defeat 5 muses in a row. Lose even 1 match, however, and it's game over. Level 1 reward. Draw 3 cards from the sword deck. Choose 1 sword card or the defeated muse as your reward and remove the remaining cards from the game. Level 2 reward. Draw 4 cards from the sword deck. Choose 2 sword cards or the defeated muse as your reward and remove the remaining cards from the game. Card overview. Muse cards serve as an opponent in the solo game. You will find the following information: the card name, and then the Initiative. The muse will not act until you have taken this many turns. The muse base stats. The muse's starting attack and defense attributes. Flavor text. A line of dialogue that has no impact on the game. Effects. Text enclosed in silver boxes describe the muse's actions. Level 1 and Level 2 muse cards have text enclosed in gold boxes describing the effects you gain if you choose that muse as a reward after defeating it. Level 3 muses, which you will face in the final match, do not have gold boxes. Instead, they have abilities that are described in a black box at the bottom of the card. Resolve these abilities as follows. Passive. This ability remains active for the duration of the match. Solo game rules. As in a two-player match, you and your muse opponent will alternate taking turns. See page 7, we already went through that. You will go first, unless otherwise stated on the muse's card. Muses will skip their turns until you have taken the number of turns equal to their initiative. Muse rules. Muses do not use the Quicken card. Muses will not act until you have taken a number of turns equal to their initiative. The muse Lunya, for example, will start taking turns after you have finished your third turn. On their turn, a muse will perform all of the actions described on their card in order from top to bottom. Once they have performed all of their actions, the muse ends their turn. For example, every turn Felicia will use Ignition, Sigil Shard, and Blaze in that order. While a muse actions don't have a cost, any tribute effects listed must be resolved. A muse will only perform actions with a limited icon once. On the following turn, skip that action. Some muses perform the same action multiple times in a row. Although the action is only described once, be sure to resolve that action however many times it is shown. Resolve a muse's response effects every time your action trigger it unless something is preventing the muse from doing so. Each time you defeat a muse, reset your attack and defense voltage to 0 and your life to 15 and return any discarded sword cards to your hand. Protea's passive ability does not trigger when you exchange coins in your set area with those from your hand. Player rules. Some sword cards and amulets have alternate effects during a solo game and are described below. Concussive Claymore, physical attack, secondary. If the muse has less than 6 life, the muse will not perform their first usable action on their next turn. Dispel Edwillis, limited time, magical attack of 4, hone, pay, cost of X, secondary. If the muse is level 1, or if this card is honed, level 2 or level 1 plus X, choose one of the muse's actions. The muse will not perform that action on their next turn. And then the Sanctuary Floret responds to physical and magical. If the muse has taken a number of turns equal to their level plus 2, negate all of the muse's attacks until the end of the turn. If you choose a defeated muse as your reward, you may use its muse ember effect. Effects that resolve during a match are considered to be actions. If you have more than 7 sword cards in your hand after choosing a reward, remove sword cards from the game until you have 7 sword cards in your hand. You may use in your amulets in response to muse's actions. Amulets. Your amulets are the 4 gambit cards you took during setup. Warding Topaz, Sanctuary Fluorite, Cessation Lapis, and Revisionist Sapphire. Amulets have a cost of 0, and unlike gambit cards, you may use them without first having to play them face down. Remove amulets from the game after use. They cannot be used again. Set combo rules. You may combine Blade Rondo Grim Guardian with Blade Rondo for a more strategic and complex gaming experience. Number 1. Create 2 piles of 40 sword cards, each containing 1 copy of every sword card from Blade Rondo and Blade Rondo Grim Guardian. Number 2. Take one of the piles and remove the 5 sword cards you don't want your opponent to use. Then hand the remaining 35 cards to your opponent. Simultaneously reveal the 5 cards you removed and then choose 7 of the 35 cards you were handed to build your hand for the match. Then follow steps 1 and 5 as described from page 5 to set up your area. You are now ready to begin the match. For a brief time, the muses will dwell in your shadow. Tear through the swarms of interpretation and take hold of the future with your own hands. Interpretation.